Howdy friend, you're here in the studio with Luke from GuitarIQ.com. In this video, I just wanted to share with you one of my favorite little tips for getting a bit more space and depth and liveliness and, dare I say, realism out of your favorite tone models within TONEX. Now, the fantastic thing about this tip is that it works on absolutely everything from clean tones to classic rock sounds to face-melting, uber-saturated, distorted tones. And it has to do with a very specific way of dialing in the reverb section within TONEX. Now, you can dial this in using the pedal as standalone hardware. Today, I'm just going to use the plugin to demonstrate this concept just for the sake of simplicity. But before we check out the exact settings I'm using here, let's just hear this in action. Now, keep in mind, this is intended to be very subtle. The whole idea here is about dialing in the reverb within TONEX to be almost an always-on type of effect, something that blends in really naturally with the sound of the particular tone model that you're using. So as you try these settings out for yourself, you'll notice it's not really about getting an entirely different sound. It's more about slightly enhancing the way a particular tone model feels to play. With that in mind, the signal chain here is my GTRS S900 guitar going into the Z-Tone pedal by IK Multimedia. This is kind of my secret sauce for the TONEX platform. I've done a separate video on that if you want to check that out, links in the description. From there, we're heading straight into the front end of my audio interface. And for the tone model today, we're going to be using the Tone King Imperial Mark II amp that was captured by Amalgam Audio. If you're not familiar with Amalgam Audio, they have a host of fantastic tone models. They sent me a few to check out. So if you like the sound here, I'll leave a link in the description for where you can check this out yourself. So let's hear this in action. I'll just do a few passes, switching the reverb in and out so you can compare the settings I have here. First up, this is with everything engaged. Let's check it out. Okay, now with the reverb off. And on. Off. Okay, so you can hear that this is very subtle. For this last pass, let's just turn that mix up a bit so we can really get a good sense of what's going on. Okay, so there you have it. Now, the whole idea here is essentially dialing in reverb to almost get a pseudo slapback echo type of sound. But because we're doing this with reverb, you end up with something that sounds halfway between reverb and delay. It's a very cool sound, and it works particularly well with room reverb algorithms like the one we have here. So as promised, let's just go through the exact settings I'm using here so you can try this out for yourself. First up, you'll notice here we have the time dialed all the way out. We're really trying to keep the reverb sound as tight as possible here, so there's no real reverb tail to speak of. But to compensate for that, we're dialing in some pre-delay. You can see I've got that set to 60 milliseconds. Now, what the pre-delay does is determine the offset between when we play a note and when the reverb sounds. So the shorter the pre-delay, the smaller and tighter our virtual room will sound, And the longer the pre-delay, the larger and more spacious our virtual room will sound. As I said, I think 60 milliseconds is a good starting point. You could dial this up to 80 if you want a slightly bigger sound, or even down to say 40 if you want a slightly tighter sound. Over to the color, again, you can see here that I've got this dialed all the way down to -10. Now, the reason for that is because I really want to keep the reverb sound as dark as possible. One, because I think darker sounding reverbs tend to sound a little more realistic with this type of effect. And two, because I really like how a darker reverb just completely stays out of the way of what you're playing. Having a darker reverb is a great way of maintaining a real sense of separation between your guitar tone and the reverb sound. And finally, coming over to the mix, for that last example, I had this dialed in at 30%, but again, because I just want this to be a really subtle, always on type of effect, most of the time I'll keep this around that 12% mark. If I'm wanting a more ambient sound on my pedal board, I can just switch on an additional reverb, like a nice plate or something like that, and the two reverbs will stack really nicely together. So to recap, I've got the time set to 0, the pre-delay set to 60 milliseconds, the color set to -10, and the mix set to 12%. Okay, so there you have it. That is one of my favorite little tips for adding a real sense of space and depth and liveliness to your tone models within TONEX in a really natural way that doesn't just sound like you're piling on a bunch of reverb. You've got the exact settings I'm using here, so go away, experiment, see what you come up with, and hopefully you'll find something that you like. If you enjoyed this video, then please let me know, hit that thumbs up button or leave a comment in the comments section. If you're interested, I'd be more than happy to do a few more little tips and tricks videos around the TONEX platform. So please consider subscribing to the channel to be notified of future uploads. A reminder to check out my last video on the Z-Tone pedal. If you're looking to get the most out of your TONEX software or your TONEX pedal, you might find that one interesting. And finally, before you go, I would love to invite you to check out the website guitariq.com to take a look at some of the learning resources we have waiting for you over there, covering everything from fretboard memorization to warm-ups and workouts to guitar technique, chord theory, scales, and a whole bunch more. That is guitariq.com. Well, that's it from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.